listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Red Moon Podcast. Oh, what are they doing over there? They're still getting ready for the show. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And, look at him. There he is. I'm going to try to stay on you, Keith, for a second. Oh, we caught him. Almost. No, he's good.
Who's good?
He was getting his shirt on.
Who's getting shirts off and on?
Sean was.
I like to see naked men.
I mean, you almost did. You almost had a half-naked man right beside you.
Do you like gladiators?
Do you like to hang around the gymnasium?
That's not a line from Airplane.
Yeah, it is.
I don't recall
Have
that
you ever
one.
seen a grown man naked?
That one,
Yeah, there's that one. He's like,
you ever been in a cockpit before?
Yeah. He's like, yeah, there's the gymnasium line.
I don't remember that.
Look it up during the review.
Well, I'm not going to look it up. I don't care.
Oh, I'll look it up. I care enough.
I just said I don't remember.
I don't stand to get corrected on my own show.
I said I don't
Come on
remember
now.
it. I didn't correct you. I said I don't remember that line.
He says, yeah, you like to hang around the gymnasium.
Man.
It's a line in there.
Man.
Somebody chat us. Shoot it to us in a chat.
I think we should all be celebrating. It is a glorious day.
I think you know why.
Because the Golden Globes are returning.
So joyful.
We could all sigh a breath of relief because I know we were all worried that we may never be able to watch a televised airing of the Golden Globes again.
So happy. I mean,
So-
cheers to that, guys. Cheers.
So,
Cheers. Cheers.
NBC, as the moral arbiters that they are, have deemed that the Hollywood Foreign Press has now made enough efforts to diversify their members, so they'll allow them.
It only took them a year.
I said they'll allow them one more year on air. They made a deal for one more. It's like we believe you're trying, so we'll give you a year. We'll throw you a bone.
Racism over 100 years to end in America. Since the
Hollywood
founding
Foreign
of
Press
our
did it in a year.
They did it in a year.
It's amazing.
I think it just shows you how virtuous they really are.
Amazing.
I'm telling you, it's amazing. But I did love that the contract for 1 year.
Yeah.
It's also
It's like
you took a year. Yeah.
It's like
we know it's gonna bomb.
We don't want to commit to anything.
It's like don't count on it coming back after this year. Okay.
I like that.
It's almost like we want to give them a send-off year.
It's not bad, Sean. It's not bad.
Which one are you having?
We're all doing the cheap sunglasses.
Yeah, it's
It's
good.
a nice golden nail. It is. Yeah.
Yep.
Crisp, very light.
I'm actually
I enjoy
glad
it.
My mother brought
we,
these from Fairhope, Alabama. Fairhope Brewing Company.
Shout out to
Yeah,
the
that's
local
the
brew
same,
down there.
It's the not this. We didn't get the same ones, but when we house sat for him and he paid us back in alcohol, he got some Fairhope beer. But
That's where I'd seen
okay.
it.
yeah.
Okay, because
I was
that's
wondering. I don't know if I tried that then.
no, but when we showed the one he brought back, I remember you saying, "Oh, that's where my mom lives."
Yeah.
And that's
That was
what,
an IPA.
That's why.
That was an
Okay.
IPA he brought. But I'm glad we didn't have an IPA because after the Padron I smoked, having something a little. The Golden Ale is it tastes
a little strong.
good. It's light, but it tastes good. So it's
Yeah.
like it's a good tasting beer without it being too powerful on my
See,
stomach.
nobody sees the the goings on behind the scenes before we start the show, but it was kind of funny that both Keith and Sean were a little incapacitated.
We were a little woozy.
Slow to
We
move.
both had some strong cigars.
Yeah.
I wish I would have joined this week. I
was
wish I
telling
could
Keith,
have.
you can feel
Yep.
the difference between a good cigar and a mediocre cigar.
Oh, well, and even especially a medium versus a strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Padron always getting up in that category of strong.
Well, he had a
I had
Perdomo.
a Perdomo.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they always, the dog just went in the bathroom. Is that okay?
That's fine. As long as she doesn't come out with the trash can.
Or a turd?
Well, I hope you
That
flushed.
somebody forgot to flush.
I left mine in there.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to see if she'd fish it out. She just, look at her going.
She's getting seconds after dinner.
Sure you
You
did.
know? But no, I agree, Sean. It's like the Perdomo, the double Ligero that we've had at the lake.
man,
those
another one.
things.
Those are the strongest I've had. was
Yeah.
the double
I have yet
yeah.
to get all the way through a Perdomo.
Really?
Like I think I got halfway through it before we left.
What's the girth of a Perdomo? Can you show us?
I mean, there's
girth?
different ones.
Can you use your fingers to describe?
The one
They do all have
the one I was
different
smoking
ones.
was 6 by 60,
6 by 60.
6 inches, 60 millimeters.
How thick?
Around, like about
That's pretty
just
big.
like big enough for your finger. Like
so is
yeah.
that considered a Churchill at that length?
No, his wasn't very.
Is that-
no?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not.
7 inches is a Churchill.
Yeah, his wasn't that.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
got you.
So the
I got you.
average
7 inches.
the
is a
average man
Churchill.
doesn't have a Churchill.
Yeah,
7 inches is a Churchill.
Churchills are like that long.
They're long.
Oh
Yeah.
wow! I
Yeah.
think I'm comparing 7 inches to something else.
That's what I said.
Brandon, yours
7 inches
yours
is
is
an
not
average.
that long, man.
I've got a Churchill.
You got a nub.
What is the girth? Don't they describe that like a torpedo? No, that's just
that's the shape.
This
The
would have
shape.
been a Gordo.
A Gordo. Okay.
Yeah.
We need to break that down in a Vices segment one night. We're not doing it tonight. We have a
Not
Vices
tonight.
segment, but
Not tonight.
No.
yeah, we need to talk about different cigar types.
have,
and we could break
Yeah,
that just
it's
like bourbon.
all these Vices segments we could talk about that, but now we're once again we're getting deep
We
into
get deep.
I know.
Well,
Honestly, for something like that, funny enough, I would want. It's funny you think it'd be the opposite. I would want to know what I'm bringing to the table if I'm going to talk about cigars, because the last thing I want is somebody to jump on, see this video sometime either now or down the road and be like, these guys are
They
idiots.
don't know what they're
They don't know what
talking
the hell they're
about.
talking about.
yeah.
Same thing when we were talking about Movie Pass.
But
we don't know what
exactly
we're talking about.
I mean,
We didn't research. You didn't
No.
even know that was a man.
I had no clue that it was ran by a man.
Yeah.
It's a woman's
You
name.
read Stacy and you said,
Yeah.
Stacy's a woman's name.
I used to work with a guy named Stacy. He was
Yeah.
a great guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what else is great?
What?
Our show tonight. We got a great
We
show.
do. We got a good
Fantastic.
review. We got some interesting headlines, and we have a very deep
Oh,
Vices segment.
shout out to
so-
Kate Winslet. Hope she gets better.
Oh, she got
had
a
an
boo-boo.
injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everything's going to be fine.
Did y'all
They
see
said-
Post Malone
yeah.
fall? Dang, man.
No.
No,
Dude
he
broke 3 ribs.
Oh wow.
He fall off the stage or
Fell
something?
on the stage. Somebody left a no, seriously.
I could just see Post Malone.
Somebody
Who
left
knows
the
when he
trap
was
door
on?
open.
So
Oh, they
freaking
left the
high.
trap
There
door
was a
open.
trap door in the stage, and somebody left it
Oh,
open,
snap.
and he didn't know it was open and walked right
Dang.
into it and fell.
Yeah, that wasn't him being high. That was someone's
Yeah.
negligence.
I've always had that fear of
Dang.
walking on the street and a manhole cover's open, and you're just going to fall right there. It's
Well,
like
you
going through a well's
watch where you're
blowhole.
walking.
You would fall into a manhole.
Hey,
For
I
sure.
will say
when you got
uh,
7-inch torpedo,
Churchill.
it's going to be a Churchill
A
torpedo.
Gordo. A Gordo Churchill.
also thought I would give a little shout out to Morgan Curry. Today's her birthday.
Happy
Oh,
birthday,
Yeah,
Morgan.
birthday.
So,
Yeah.
Nothing
say
better
happy
to celebrate
birthday to-
Yeah.
when we're talking about
Morgan's
terrible things.
I know. I'm just like falling down a manhole, and I was like, "Huh, Nathan Morgan." There we go. Yeah. It's just that's something.
You know what, Morgan? Sit back, enjoy the show, have a nice cigar on us, okay?
She's probably.
She's
I don't
in
know,
bed.
Yeah.
She's in bed.
bedtime.
Probably.
Yeah.
All right, we do have a great show. We've got a movie review for
Yeah!
once.
Reviews!
Not only the review is good, the movie was too.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talked to somebody at work today who went and saw it this past weekend.
It's getting a lot of positive buzz.
Had quite the different opinion than we
Really?
have.
No, I could see that. There's some people that I think are just going to find it too
We'll see.
bizarre, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
So-
talk. We'll talk about it in our deep dive discussion after the recorded review. But here is our general thoughts, our official review of Barbarian.
We have only 10 more days left in September, which means spooky season is steadily approaching. Much as the walking killer with the knife, we can't outrun it. And in this case, we don't want to. As October and the Halloween season begins, a slew of horror and horror-adjacent films are releasing, with major titles like Rob Zombie's The Munsters, Hocus Pocus 2, and Halloween Ends high on everyone's radar. One horror thriller that has already released has managed to stir up some unexpected buzz. Barbarian, written and directed by Zach Kreger of the Whitest Kids You Know fame, has found success amongst horror fans and critics alike. While other horror-centric releases this year have ties to previous franchises, Barbarian is new and unique, and most of all, refreshing. Starring Georgina Campbell as Tess, a young woman who has booked an Airbnb in a dubious part of a Detroit neighborhood. When she arrives, she learns that the Airbnb has been double booked, and is currently occupied by another guest named Keith, played by Bill Skarsgård. The two, unable to reach the Airbnb's owner, agree to temporarily share the house until they can get in touch with the renter. But the home is not what it seems, and Tess soon discovers darker secrets when she discovers a door and hidden tunnel in the basement of the house. Barbarian is a welcome surprise and a perfect kickoff to the Halloween season. While Hollywood continues to regurgitate the same content over and over, Barbarian is a unique and smaller, original film. Simple and low budget, the movie focuses on telling a solid story that will unnerve you and keep you in suspense. With well-written characters and a story that is believable yet outlandish all the same, Barbarian fuses suspense and humor while never taking things too far. Kreger seems to take a few cues from horror master Wes Craven, with Barbarian having a blend of both Craven's The Hills Have Eyes and The People Under the Stairs. Yet while Kreger has Craven's mastery of unnerving and disturbing imagery and ideas, he supplements it with believable characters that both feel real while also taking on horror cliches and tropes at the same time. Horror movies are often laden with characters who make terrible decisions, such as exploring dark tunnels we all know will end badly. Barbarian flips these tropes by lampooning them humorously only for the humor to lead to well-built suspense and terror. Much like flipping typical cliches into actual character development and narrative, Barbarian also doesn't spoon-feed its themes and morals to its audiences. Well-crafted scenes and imagery tell the story and allow the pieces to fall into place. We are never spoon-fed the true horrors of humanity, but we realize them all the same by the film's end. And while some may not like the goofier nature of the film, as Barbarian does cross over into the bizarre a bit, these moments only serve to drive home the horror that much more. With writing, cinematography, and direction all geared toward unnerving the audience before delivering a massive scare, Barbarian proves to be a fun and well-crafted horror film that is genuinely frightening as well. It's simple, yes, low budget, yes, but the movie is never cheap. Its biggest faults, in fact, are the rare shot that doesn't live up to the production value of the rest of the movie. In most aspects, however, Barbarian is the finely crafted film we see less and less of as Hollywood remains obsessed with beating a dead horse. Ultimately, Barbarian does deliver and is a perfect start to the Halloween season. I give Barbarian 3.5 out of 4 stars.
3.5 out of 4
I liked it.
stars.
It was good. It was creepy. It was spooky.
Just so you all know, before the review was over, we were talking about OnlyFans.
Yeah. Well, let's have some context.
We were talking about how our society is in just complete
Peril.
Peril, yes, that's a good way. That's a very good way to
Complete
put
disarray.
it. I mean, when OnlyFans, I saw
Depraved.
a tweet that was showing that the top 10 vendors or like paid sites, Amazon was number 1, of course, but OnlyFans was number 2. And you might think, oh, well, at least Pornhub's not up there. And it's like, yeah, but nobody pays for Pornhub. It's like everybody knows you can go there and get plenty for free.
Yeah.
OnlyFans, it's like, this is, it's sad. It's sad.
Hey,
It is.
Hey, not
Moral
everything
decay.
on OnlyFans is nudity. There are other accounts.
You're right.
Just 99% of it's nudity.
Yeah.
I personally like the foot. I'm the foot fetish.
The foot
person.
one, yeah.
I can't help it.
Well, they have,
help
like,
it,
I know some celebrities have stuff on there that, like, it's not nudity. It's just, like, them doing, like,
Let's talk about
does-
Barbarian.
I'm just saying, like, but it's like, you know, Patreon, like, some...
He wants his
Chris
Pratt
Pratt
Pratt.
have one?
Some
I'll
people,
pay.
some people do use it more like a Patreon, where like they're doing actual not.
Yeah, but everybody
sexual
knows.
anything.
It's
But
a cultural norm.
99% of it is nudity.
But everybody who sends their their Patreons
Yeah.
to
Right.
OnlyFans, it's like, come on,
Yeah.
like. You don't. No dude is getting successful off of OnlyFans. It's mostly women.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
that's just BS. But anyway, sorry, we
No,
digress.
I'm just saying, like I said,
No,
99%
I-
of it is nudity, but there are a few accounts that are not.
Yeah.
I would say 99.9%.
Yeah.
I kind of want to meet the people who are making money off of it that are not part of the 99.9.
Yeah.
I think it would take us longer to find those people.
Well, the celebrities
who are truly
that
successful.
don't do nudes, but they're still probably doing I don't know what I know
provocative
I
looking
know,
pictures.
You mentioned
Well, yeah, the Cash Me Outside girl.
her and Cardi B both make, I think, like the two of them top most, and
Yeah.
neither one of them do anything new.
No,
But
she
they're
made
very,
people mad
very-
because she announced that she had an OnlyFans now, and that she was gonna and people paid.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
and
they
then
thought
and
there
there
Well,
weren't
that's
any
just
nude
like
pics.
what's her name? Bella
So,
Thorne did that.
Yeah.
And she didn't show any nudity for the longest.
Let's
she's
talk about. We
dive
surely
into.
should talk about Barbarian.
That's what I'm saying.
If we want to talk about
let
nudity,
me put it this way.
Spoiler alert: there's
It's
nudity in
very-
Barbarian.
Well, it's very
Oh, yeah.
barbaric. The society was hedonistic and barbaric.
There's some-
When
there's-
we raise up OnlyFans, okay?
That's true.
So we can talk about this movie now.
Some,
We're only fans of movies.
I will say Barbarian was kind of a messed up movie, but in a good way. So,
Yeah.
I was saying, we're talking about like there's people who don't like it, but for the most part, it has been getting a lot of positive buzz. But for me, there's movies I think like this and Nope, or even not outside of Nope, movies like Midsommar and The Witch. Like I have family members I know who don't like, or even Paranormal Activity, that don't like any of those movies, and I liken it to the fact that they don't have critical thinking skills. So if they
Dang, Keith.
So
I don't
if-
like Paranormal
so-
Activity.
So, well, that one's a little bit so if they don't see the killer with the bloody knife, they're just like, well, this is dumb, and I'm like, but it's not necessarily that's scary to me. It's the unseen and the fact that you don't know what's going to happen. That is, and I think this movie has a lot of that in there too. I mean, it does have more of the killer in your face too, as well. But I think there's just some stuff in this that does come off bizarre, and that's the nature of the movie. So I see how that'll and in a more serious note, like not because people are stupid. I just think some people don't have that type of flavor when you have kind of the little bit more of the because there is some humor to the movie too. I told you I feel like it's what Malignant wanted to be with some of the humor, but Malignant was just awful, even though critics praised it.
Yeah, it was.
So-
it was not.
And I think some people don't like that. They don't like that kind of fusion of like the really kind of gonzo out there type thing mixed in. They just want straight up like Michael Myers or
See, but that's
Jason,
what I think is
you
stale.
know.
I mean,
I
here's
do-
the
I
thing.
agree. It is stale
We
for
already know,
me.
like we know Halloween Ends is coming,
Yeah.
and I'm looking
And
forward to it.
I don't know. After Halloween Kills, I'm just
Again.
looking forward to it ending.
Well, I'm in between. I really do think and I hope they end on a high note.
yeah.
Loved Halloween from 2017.
Yeah.
Kills lackluster, absolutely. I hope it ends up being the weakest of the bunch.
Yeah.
I don't think the story that they're building to is totally gone.
No.
So I do have faith that they'll at least wrap it up nicely.
Yeah.
But again, we know what that franchise is. We know what we're getting. I'm okay with that being the case for Halloween, but for, with James Wan, you even said, kind of with his films.
You know what you're getting when you watch a James Wan film.
But the thing
They're
was,
all-
it was very interesting when he first came on the scene with
'cause they
Sinister.
were new. It was new. It was
Was it-
different.
was it
No, he
Sinister?
did Insidious.
Insidious. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
And then he did The Conjuring, and it was new and different and refreshing.
But even with the latest Conjuring 3 that we reviewed,
well, he didn't make that one,
but even he produced it.
he did produce it.
And it was terrible, not only because it didn't have James Wan's flair. It was just, you can tell he backed out of the series because it was kind of like you're beating a dead horse. Something that you've seen the success of, it's kind of peaked, and it's like, okay, I want to turn to something else.
Yeah.
And I give James Wan credit in that regard for at least backing off to that.
He
in
still
that degree.
produces all of the Conjuring verse
Excuse me.
movies, and none of them are any good except for Conjuring 1 and 2.
But even
yeah.
even still, I with this film, what I loved about it is it does take a lot of tropes, and it turns them upside down. It's a good subversion of expectations.
Yeah.
And not done out of a completely ridiculous, like, fan glorifying way, or in a way of trying to trick you and be like, a cheap trick up the sleeve. No, it actually takes moments that you've seen plenty of times in horror movies, and it actually showcases what would happen if they followed the instructions that you as a viewer would be like, no, don't open that door. Or, oh, why didn't they just do this?
Yeah.
There's at least, I felt like a logical representation. Minus a few exceptions, and I know we'll there will be some nitpicky things that I may have.
Also, moments where I thought they were trying to emphasize like Justin Long's character. I know, like, I could see people watching him with the tape measure and be like, "Who would do that?" So it's ridiculous. But I love that because it was, even though it was a little bit of an exaggeration of like how far he was willing to go with his tape measure.
Yeah.
It really emphasized just how much of a jackass his character is.
Yes.
And it played into the movie really well. It wasn't just the stereotype of, well, I need this character to do this so he gets into mess. It was, we're going to do something that's kind of cliche, but at the same time, it plays into the overall theme of who he is and what
honestly,
the movie's going to be about.
That's what the movie nailed. When you bring up Justin Long's character and even just the actions, the movie tells it doesn't, or it shows it doesn't tell. And so many problems with the past few weeks in the movies that we've reviewed are so caught up in explaining certain things that it's like, no, show us, don't tell us. This is a movie. And this did it so brilliantly in the way it carried the story forward, and it showcased all of its, narrative exposition. And I just think so. It did so in a brilliant way, from start to finish. But Sean, what did you think of the film?
No, I agreed with the 3.5. I didn't have to even really think about it. It was like as soon as I walked out of the theater, I was pretty dead set on that. There were a couple of instances, like we talked about, where there's, like in every horror, thriller, suspense kind of film, you're always kind of like, why did she do that? Or why wouldn't she just leave? Why wouldn't, but I think the movie does do a good job of explaining, even in later scenes, why they made the choices that they did, whether it's the actual like character of the character and not just a poor decision. It's kind of like they do reiterate, well, this is why she chose to do this. And then there was a lot of things that surprised me, because there were things that I was looking at in the set pieces where I'm like, well, why wouldn't she do this or what? And then she does. It's kind of like, I thought I had a clever idea, and then okay, well, they showed how clever they were in the writing and in the decision making of these characters.
Yeah,
like the mirror, using it as a light down the hallway and things like that. There was a lot of that. But I even think, like, even Justin Long's character, we joke about it and we say, yeah, it was comedic, a little bit of this relief in the middle of this scary ass movie. But it was also, to me, we all know those people that they wouldn't know danger if it was right in front of them.
Right.
And we know those people.
Or they're in such a preoccupied state of, again, what I think they were portraying with his character, which is
selfishness.
He doesn't care about anything.
Yeah.
Nothing like that's going to happen to him because he's a bro. He's cool. And again, and I told you, when we walked out of the theater, I was going to have a major problem with that perspective because of the political nature of today's world and how everything is just viewed through this lens of toxic masculinity or white supremacy or what, all the woke crap that people pile on. But I said, the film brilliantly displays within the character of Bill Skarsgård's Bill Skarsgård's character. It brilliantly displays the juxtaposition of the two, and both with similar qualities, but how the characters are very drastically different. And to me, that gave more credit and weight to the story that was being told, in that it didn't just seem like a political hack job of trying to shoehorn in some kind of modern wokeness into a movie. You could literally watch this film and walk away. To me, this is the kind of film you'll watch now, and I guarantee you, I haven't even read any other third-party reviews. I guarantee you there's other reviews out there that shoehorn or shovel in woke garbage into the pinpoints of this film. And even the filmmakers, I guarantee you, are probably on the left side of the aisle screaming about how, oh, yeah, absolutely, it says this message. It doesn't.
No,
they're going to sit there and parade it around as if maybe it does, to thinking it's going to be to the film's credit. No, you do a disservice to the film if you drop it down to that kind of minimalist thinking. I really do think you can watch this film and it just be a good horror film with a good story from start to finish, with good, well-made and well-detailed characters.
For me, like everything Sean was talking about like how the set pieces and like, why doesn't she do this? And then she did. That was the problem I had with The Black Phone earlier this year. And this movie was like the exact opposite of that, where it was actually much more, it was the cleverness Black Phone wanted. I feel like Black Phone was sold on like being that clever movie that it really isn't, because every time like the kid would do something to try to escape this basement, I was just like, he's not like, why is he not attempting any of this random, like it bugged me. And in this, I did like the fact that they did kind of like, they behaved in a way I think real people would, as far as like their curiosity, and how like she does take the mirror because it's like, I'm curious, I want to know what's down there, but I'm not just going to walk straight into the dark.
Right, exactly.
So I really liked that it was more realistic, even with some of the outlandish stuff. Like the outlandish stuff was outlandish when it needed to be to sell the horror, but it always came back to the actual, like the main characters and the people that the horror's happening to. They were realistic, and that's what I appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, well, sometimes when a film is leans more on the realistic side, it actually makes it scarier.
Yes,
and that's always been the thing with horror movies and stuff for me, is there's so many bad decisions, there's so much stupidity and ignorance, that it's like there's not a real person in this world that's that dumb.
Exactly.
And so it takes me out of the realm. It takes me completely out of the story. And this movie, it did that. It showed the things that I was wanting to see, but then it also showed some of them fail, and it showed how they failed, and it showed some of them succeed and why they succeeded. And that made me feel like if I was in that situation and I was making those decisions, it would have been, it's that much more terrifying. It is believable.
I also love too how the film builds the tension from a story that you think is going in one direction and it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it really does a good job, because look, when you watch this film, and I immediately thought of this of just, in a filmmaker mindset, having walked out of the theater, it's hard to tell the story where you know all the story beats and you know how the story is going to go without revealing that sleight of hand too soon for the audience to outwit you. And for me, what this movie did really well was it told the story it wanted to tell, but it does so convincingly to the audience, again, as if you're going in for the first time and you're seeing it for the first time without all of these reveals. And I appreciate that from a filmmaker standpoint, because that's very hard to do when you already know the makeup of the story. It's very hard to continue to create that same story with the same feel of anxiousness from the very first opening scene that has nothing to, that doesn't play out anywhere the way you think it would by the end of the film. And even some of the weird twists and turns that I think most people, when we talk about it being, I guess, realistic in nature, there is kind of a sci-fi element, no doubt, that's added that I don't think is done illogically.
No, it's not poorly. Yeah.
It's not done poorly.
It's a little bit of a supernatural element,
right?
But
it's not so
too
far fetched that you're thinking this is ridiculous, but it does it just enough and suspends that disbelief just enough that you're just like, this is a crazy, messed up story.
Oh yeah.
But again, that's the reason you're coming in to see it. You're coming in to view it, and it takes you down a different path that you weren't expecting. But it's believable, and it keeps you invested and keeps you wanting to find out what's going to happen.
I mentioned in my review, the movie has very Wes Craven-like elements, as far as I mentioned specifically in the review, both The Hills Have Eyes and The People Under the Stairs, which you mentioned, because Wes Craven made both. But at the same time, I feel like it actually knows when to pull back better than Wes Craven did, because sometimes Wes Craven would get a little over the top with some of the
intentionally.
Even in Nightmare on Elm Street, some of like the gore elements with Freddy Krueger. It's like Wes Craven went a little like all in on some of those aspects, and this movie has some of those unnerving elements that Wes Craven was good at, but is able to tone it back when it needs to and give the characters a lot more development than some of Wes Craven's movies. So I really like that. And I'm not knocking Wes Craven because I love him, but I just felt like this was kind of something that has a foundation of an old school horror master, but then for a modern audience that's done in a way that is more realistic and believable.
And this easily could have devolved, like it could have went in the direction of what we saw with the original, slasher flicks.
Yeah.
With, after the second movie, the third movie, the fourth movie, the fifth movie of Jason.
When they just devolve into ridiculousness.
But again, kind of going back to what you were talking about, Sean, with the fact that it's easy to take these cheap tricks of what slasher flicks were, and because you already kind of had the understanding from the audience's perspective of, they're coming to see a movie, they're going to expect us to just have thought about all the different possibilities. So the one that we're going with in the film, it must be the most clever and most realistic possibility. And it's like, again, that's gearing your movie towards a low-level thinker.
Yeah.
That's gearing your movie towards a person who just wants to come in.
People who don't like it, they're not critical thinkers.
No, I agree. And I mean, and my final thought on it is basically, I did feel like the movie had layers to it, and it had these layers that you sometimes at the beginning of a movie you get this piece of the story, and then about a half hour or so in, you're kind of like, oh, I know what's gonna, and you felt like that 2 or 3 times through this movie, and then there kept being more. But then on top of that, going back to the realistic aspect of it, sometimes in these horror movies, the evil that's presented is just, like
explained away,
or it's just so. Again, it's kind of far fetched. It's like with the first Jeepers Creepers movie, I thought was a good movie.
I like the first
but it's like,
one,
okay,
yeah,
well,
but
what's the explanation? Oh, it's a demon. It comes every so many years and eats people. Okay, so but the evil in this movie was it's dark and it's disgusting and terrifying. But then you find out that evil was created by another evil that's not so like terrifying and disgusting. It's an evil. It's an evil that could be inside of any one of us.
That's right.
And it's like when it turns into that and explains the evil that you're seeing down in this pit or these tunnels, it's like it's not just a monster. It's the first time you see this thing in the crawl space, it's like, oh, it's a monster or a zombie or something,
right?
And then you find out the truth of it, and it's just God, like that makes it more terrifying because it's like
it has
those
depths and layers. Yeah, yes. I agree, and I think that is a trap that just like just cheap action movies. I think horror and comedy both, but horror is they're so cheap to make horror that now I think a lot of makers know that they're going to turn a profit most of the time anyways, because horror has a mass fan. Like most people just go watch a horror movie, especially this time of year, regardless. And I think they don't try anymore to add the depth because they know we can cater to the lowest common denominator, and people are still going to go see it because it's a cheap horror movie that people are like, oh, it's the season, let's go watch it. Right. And I think that's why a lot of horror fail now, is because you don't have the people behind them saying, well, how do we make this real and actually scary? I think you are getting a little bit of a horror comeback in these later years with Midsommar, The Witch.
And it's funny because you keep mentioning Midsommar, and I'm like, Midsommar to me, that's not a horror movie, but I mean, it is so grounded in reality of cults and all this weird stuff that it's like there's probably honestly, people out there like that. Like
but
it's really,
it
is. Yeah, and that's what's creepy about it.
I think of like The Witch. Yeah. I think of what was the one how we screwed
Hereditary.
Up? Hereditary. Yeah, that movie that was freaking messed up, and it definitely borderlines into that very cultish the occult. Yeah. But I do want to say. As much as I love this film, there were a few negatives that I had, nitpicky things.
Yeah, there are.
One was the shots I thought were brilliant. I thought the cinematography was really well done.
All but
again,
one.
Part of all.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
all but one.
Yes, and it is funny because I told y'all at work. The guy who's seen it at work, he mentioned specifically about how. That was actually the one scene he brought up that everybody in the theater laughed when it happened. Yeah. Now, we didn't have the same reaction.
Not that bad, but
we all did say in the moment, that was a little cheesy.
It reminded me of Mama, which was actually creepy and good until the very end. It wasn't as bad as Mama was like really bad. Like they really screwed the pooch on the ending of that movie.
They butchered that one.
But it was, you get to the end of that movie, and then it just all falls apart, and you laugh at it. But at least this one doesn't fall apart. It's one bad shot.
Right.
Yeah.
But that, and then also, there were a few story elements that I thought, two in particular, again, a moment of why didn't you do this? Particularly a scene, and I don't want to spoil too much. She runs from her car to go back to the house, and there's someone chasing after her. Why didn't she just jump in the car and leave? Granted, I know it says more about her character as to why she retreated to the house.
Yeah.
Because, and I tried to explain this to even my buddy at work as far as how it's distinctly showing the difference between her character and the other. It's that juxtaposition, but nitpicky. And also the way the cops responded to her.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I thought that was a little too on the nose of these are cops, we don't care. Especially from the guy who kind of seems like they're going to help, but then they turn it around on her like, okay, you're the only one acting nuts. And I'm like, this is the only house that's an Airbnb in this area while the whole rest of the neighborhood is completely dilapidated. I'm like, it doesn't make sense that she's raising this alarm and you wouldn't check it out.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little bit too convenient that the cops didn't investigate. And I thought that played to a narrative also that we see in today's world being pushed.
A little bit better if later you found out that the cops also knew about what was going on.
And actually,
there is a homeless guy that does know about it.
My buddy at work had even said. He said it kind of seemed like the people she ran to that didn't seem interested. That he was like, "Oh, is this going to be a twist where everybody's in on the shtick?"
No, yeah.
And it's like, no, that wasn't how they played it. And so looking back on it, I was kind of like, yeah, that just conveniently went along too much with the narrative of, oh, she's alone and doesn't have anybody to turn to.
Right.
And again, I also just didn't like the message considering the current event of today's world.
No, I understand.
But I mean, again, nitpicky things. Overall, I felt like most of the story, and again, how the movie starts versus how it ends, you not only don't see coming, it logically, to me, follows a path that does make sense and ultimately you're pleased by. It's not a subversion of expectations where you're like, oh, that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
They're just pulling up a trick out of the sleeve to say, gotcha.
Yeah.
You thought it was going one way, but now it's not. Ha. No, they're way more clever than that. And that, to me, not only makes a good horror film, it just makes a good movie.
Yeah. I feel like the twist in that was close to M. Night in his early days.
Yes.
Now the twists in his films are like
gimmicky.
It's like, oh well, that was a government experiment on a beach, or it's like, I mean, that was terrible. And it's like, it's just it you get to the end and you think there's going to be this twist that blows your mind, and it doesn't. Nope did that. Nope gave me something I was not expecting.
Was good. Yeah.
And this movie does the same.
Well, I think it again, as I don't want to go back to your critical thinking.
No, I know.
but
I mean, I'm not serious. Like, I mean, I do think there's people who just don't like, but I mean, I don't think they're really actually dumb, and that's why they don't like it.
It pisses me off when I go see a movie like Old, for instance.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're the one that brought me here to the theater to make me spend my hour and a half of time thinking that you thought through all of the different facets of the story.
Yeah.
So for the payoff to be not only that weak need, but just completely just off the wall and ridiculous. It's like, that's a waste of time. Mm-hmm. And granted, I'd do AMC Stubbs A-list, but it would be a waste of money if I didn't. Right. And so for me, I'm just
like Sean said, and that was one of the problem with the Old, was that they don't behave the way real people do. It's
right.
Like when yes, I understand there is a certain level of when you're panicking or when you're in survival mode, like, instincts kick in and stuff, and sometimes you might make a rash decision that you shouldn't have, but that's different. A rash decision is entirely different from some idiotic decision nobody would make. Like,
right.
That's two different scenarios.
And real quick, that was actually, you reminded me of it there. The other little nitpick was early on in the film, there were a few times where I felt like the reactions and the conversation, or I should say the story and the way it played out was realistic. Some of the dialogue was a little bit too on the nose with how they're describing the way in which they would approach this situation. Yeah. And again, not in a terrible, like, rolling my eyes like this is god awful, but in a little bit of they're conveniently throwing that plot point in there to explain why they're reacting this way. But it wasn't done terribly. It wasn't it could have been done way, way worse. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think we all agree, fantastic movie.
It was
3.5. Go see this over The Woman King. Go see this over. Not because The Woman King is trash. We haven't seen it. We're not gonna see it, but this needs some love. $10 million film. Mm-hmm. Was the budget?
Mm-hmm. It's already made its money. Like, it's doubled its money already.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely worth seeing. Go watch it. Mm-hmm. Alrighty, guys. I think we're ready to move into our headlines.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. We're entering into that season.
I'm ready for October.
We've got some movies lined up that we're going to review. We got our Halloween reviews back.
Spooky movies.
Spooky.
What's in the headlines?
Let's talk about our headlines. Our first headline for tonight is, funny enough, kind of goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about with Barbarian being a $10 million budget film. It's an indie flick by that definition. And inflation happens to be hitting films pretty hard on the indie film scene.
Yeah, it's indie films hard. You know, the big production companies. I mean, sure they deal with inflation too, but they're able to withstand and handle it a lot.
They have
better.
a little bit more money to throw at it.
Yeah,
Disney's
they
not,
can weather the storm.
Yeah, Disney's not hurting from inflation right now.
Neither is, and honestly, neither are the bigger producers like Netflix and Amazon Prime. I mean,
but yeah,
Rings
it's
of Power ain't
definitely
cheap.
when you're basically a no-name filmmaker trying to, break it into biz. It is hard when you're fronting all the money and the price of everything keeps skyrocketing.
And in particular, the link that we have down in the description below specifically is talking about how the problem with a lot of the bigger, corps, and the bigger movie moguls, they can actually go out and they, again, like you said, your Disney's, Warner Brothers, Paramounts, they can front load the cost up front and weather the storm through the day-to-day offerings of what a film may throw, the challenges that a film set may throw at it. But ultimately, when you're talking indie film, you're having to go directly to a bank to ask for money up front.
Money,
And going to a middleman bank that's charging you the
if your film doesn't make any money, you're screwed.
Well, yeah, that's no secret to anybody in Hollywood.
Well, I mean, because a bigger business, bigger companies, they have tax write-ups, they have
but
loopholes.
Like you mentioned Disney. Disney's made some terrible films in the last 3 or 4 years,
but they make money.
But they keep making money, and that's you have one good Marvel movie, and then you have 6 bad ones.
Well,
and it's
actually, that's what I kind of wanted to bring up, because the funny thing about it, at least that we've seen and we've kind of hyped up, and I don't think it's ever really been that different with the indie scene, is that's where you're getting a lot of your original works.
Oh yeah.
Now sometimes you're going to have original works that don't pan out so well, or they are on the top of an old. I mean, we've talked actually bringing up M. Night Shyamalan and his way back into the industry in the good graces were through the indie films like Split or The Visit.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And then of course with Old being another indie flick, and it's like
that one wasn't.
But that's the thing is, you see him fronting the cost of some of these out of his own pocket.
Yeah,
and yet at least that way he either reaps the benefit or reaps the mess that it brings.
Kevin Smith does that for most of his. He fronts most of his own movies recently. I mean, he did back in the day. He had to deal with Miramax and the Weinsteins, but I know like his last few, he's
Heart of Gold.
Clerks 3, I think he funded himself. So there are a lot of, I think, the smaller directors that never were like. Not that Kevin Smith is unknown, but I mean he's never been as massive as like a company like Disney. So I think those people that know where their niche is and know that they have more of a cult popularity and know that they can make their money back are like kind of going the indie route because
that, and also I think as much as we crap on Marvel sometimes and DC, in terms of where Marvel's now at and where DC always has been. But it's like
still at.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I saw it today. The Rock tweeted an advertisement for Black Adam. It was just like the end of hero saving or something. I don't know. It was some stupid tagline. But it was just terrible. I'm sitting here, I'm like, you're not
Black Adam.
Yeah, I'm like, you're not doing anything different. But it is funny because we know that these films ultimately at the end of the day will support the films on the lower end.
Yeah.
And it will reap the benefit of the fact that Disney or these bigger companies can buy out indie films or promote them.
Used to be the case, but I mean we are having I haven't seen Disney do anything small, which I mean I'd have to look. I guess Fox Searchlight is still owned by them, so
well, but even still, you also
it's just Searchlight now.
But you also look at something like Hocus Pocus 2.
Yeah, and that's
not going to have a budget of a huge mega flick.
That is a smaller movie.
And so with that being the case, it's like, can we really blame these big industry films when they do bring us the indie films? But is the creativity truly backing up? I mean, you kind of go back to the early 2000s and you see this golden era of indie films that was really
Little Miss Sunshine,
Good Will Hunting's late 90s.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Ex Machina.
Oh, I love that one.
Would be on the tail end of that. And you think about we've talked about it with like Blumhouse and some of the successes they've had. Upgrade is fantastic.
Heck, I even liked Hardcore Henry.
Oh, Hardcore
Yeah.
Henry
I thought that
excellent.
was something
That
I've
was
never
good.
seen
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
That was
Hardcore
a
Henry was
super
very
cheap
well
movie.
done.
Yeah.
So you see some of these indie films that do penetrate the mainstream, but at the end of the day, if they are such a risk, I think it's fair to ask for those smaller production companies, or even when we've seen some of these indie films where they have like 7 or 8 title plates of production companies that are backing them.
Yeah.
And so much of it is they've come together to all take out a piece of the loan, I guess, from the bank.
Yeah.
But the big issue here with the indie films right now is when they're trying to borrow that money, they're borrowing it at such a huge inflation rate that it's starting to either cut into the actual resources that they have to make these films, and they have no safety net. You pretty much are not only doing the risk of having to make this indie flick, but then what happens if it doesn't succeed, or if it's a good film and it's marginal, success at best? And is that going to, one, have the banks in your favor in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not. And two, what big corporation is going to see that failure and think, oh, well, we want to chase after that dream? So why would they invest in an indie film? I mean,
No, I mean,
it's like
kind of a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
Because I think you've given the answer, and it's kind of like I completely agree with you. I even go down to the fact that when they go, I think a lot of people, and all of us have experienced this too with inflation. A lot of the things that we kind of know how much things cost, and then when we go, we're wrong. It's changed.
yeah.
And I think when you have people that are coming up with the budgets for films, and they go to present this budget to a bank and a business plan and a script and all these things, because they have to tell them, like, oh, here's what the film is going to be about. They're not going to give you money if they think it's going to be a crappy movie. So I'm just saying they have an idea of what things cost. Think about when they start building these sets. And lumber has gone up 26%.
That's right.
And then they have to go back to the bank and say, we didn't realize how much lumber was. We didn't realize how much.
We were
everything.
filming on location in this city, and then we got rained out, and then all of a sudden it was winter, so we had to wait till the spring. Oh, well, now when we go and we've actually refinanced this film, now it's 10-20% more.
Wow, yeah.
Because of inflation.
Yeah.
So now it's costing that much more in terms of, even just like you said, whether it's lumber costs, whether it's buying your actors for another round of shoots.
No.
I mean,
we have a house down the street from us that they started building last year when we first moved in, and it's a gorgeous. It looked like it was going to be this beautiful, gorgeous house. And we started to notice the grass getting taller in the yard. We started to notice there's nobody showing up to work. It's just the framing and the outside. There's no siding or brick or paint, and it's like, what happened? And we know exactly what happened. They had $300,000 or $400,000 to build a house, and
Everything
happened. Yeah. Everything, inflation went up, and they can't afford to finish the house.
Nope.
So they've just left it sit there.
Yep.
And
hoping the market
who knows?
crashes, or hoping prices come down.
And you have to believe it's not much different with creating a film. Building a film is very similar. So
and
I feel like a lot of them
a lot harder when you're in the position of being not only in a project that you hope to finish in a timely manner, or promise to whatever studio, or even get ready for a film festival to premiere there, but ultimately it's like, what happens when you have already spent all this money and you don't have a project that is even going to possibly bring you money back in?
Yeah.
Then you're kind of screwed, because it's like you still owe the bank. You still owe, that, and not only that, but the more you keep that money from going back and paying it off, it's interest that's building on top of that at the inflated rate.
Yep. Well, you mentioned how, let's say there's a weather and just the seasons change and you got to move locations. What about 2 years of COVID? People started films 2 years ago, or almost 3 years ago now. They started films and had to stop production, and now that they're starting back up, it costs twice as much as it did before.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's funny too, because
they're being scrapped.
I think
because
you
of that.
see, and almost in the same sense, you see what happened then with a lot of small businesses. Corporations were fine. Yeah. Amazon, Walmart, Apple, all of them were fine. It was your smaller mom and pops that had to close their doors because they could not keep up with the mandated closures. We lost so many mom and pop shops. And you think about these indie films, it's like we can get on this podcast every week and complain about the crappy Marvel movies that continue to spew out. That Disney has obviously chosen this path to go down in terms of mediocrity, but or even countless remakes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, can we blame them for something that we know is going to be a continual cash cow?
I mean, yeah, they are a business. They got to make sure they do what's going to make them money.
But if we also know that the only reason that they're continuing to do that is because it's not about just only supporting the indie filmmakers, but it's like not giving them a chance. It's going back to the same way like you just described it with the COVID lockdowns. When you completely devoid the creativity from reaching the big screen because these people can't compete favorably, they can only come up against the big bets. And I told Keith this, I said, as much crap as we've also given Netflix on this show and how much content there is just out there in general, it's hard to cut through the noise. But at least Netflix has offered a platform for a lot of creative content that I wouldn't see otherwise. Squid Game is a foreign TV series that would never, ever have seen the light of day in America and been as popular and cultural a hit had it not been for Netflix.
Well, even RRR got its
good
recognition
example.
because of Netflix. And I will give Netflix this. I mean, because we talk about Disney and other companies and companies going woke, and Netflix does have woke material on there. But like you said, they give a platform to really everybody. Yeah, they do have material that we would consider woke, but then they also have material that woke people hate. I mean, people can't stand Dave Chappelle, and they still support him.
That's true.
So I'm just saying, Netflix, I feel like is at least they're being the business and we're just going to have a little bit of everything. And I'm like, I can, I can be okay with
we've
that.
seen them come out and specifically point to instances where they've pulled up certain films and they've put films in a certain spotlight that it wouldn't have otherwise had it either gone a theatrical release or had it been honestly for certain production companies that were like, no, we can't release this in theaters. We know it's going to fail, so we're just going to scrap it. I mean, we've talked about Batgirl, and I know we have our own opinions there.
Yeah.
But the reason I think it also caused such a big uproar in the industry today is because with something like Batgirl, you almost expect for it to not be a big problem for them to put it on a streaming service. Whether it's going to fail or succeed, it's like you've already put in the resources to make the project.
It was never supposed to be a theatrical movie,
right.
So at that point,
why
it's
didn't
like,
you just show it anyway and give the fans
you let Snyder do. I mean, it's great. I know it was different owners. I know they were owned by different people at the time, but still, you gave Snyder his Snyder cut. So
And what harm is there in at least saying, this is going to have nothing to do with our roadmap?
If it's already produced,
but it's already made. Even if it just absolutely is crap, it's like you're pissing off more people for not having the content available.
Especially when you're going forward with these other DC movies anyways.
Yeah.
And I know they could say, well, we still would have had to spend money on marketing. No, you wouldn't.
When it takes Ezra
drop it on there.
Miller
You don't have to market the
to
movie at all.
literally
Just dump it on your
be
streaming
arrested for raping somebody or violently theft and all sorts of crime and
fighting
imaginable.
his fans,
It's like when it takes that extent to be like, we're thinking about canceling The Flash.
No, they made it,
it's like, okay,
they made him do rehab. It's okay now.
Exactly. Do this or your film's canceled. It's just a joke. It's a joke anytime they play the moral card. But I also feel like it's a joke when you've already invested these resources, whether you think the film is crap or not. Okay, fine. Then let people either lambaste it or, again, what's the old saying in news? It's like, it's
any press is good press.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, even if it's bad and people are groveling about it, you can sit there and say
inflation was too high. They couldn't afford to release Batgirl. So
on their streaming service that they already have.
Inflation was too high. They couldn't finish the post-production.
I think there was more to it than cost. In that regard.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Hey, Michael Keaton said it best. I'm sure they canceled it for good reasons.
Right.
That's
maybe,
outside.
That's maybe all he knows.
Yeah. I keep going back when you talk about stuff like that. I go back to that movie, The Hunt, and how that's like public opinion didn't want. It wasn't a financial thing. It was more based on we don't want to.
We don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hunt wasn't that bad. We
It
went
wasn't
watching
that
it. I'm like,
bad.
nobody was
Yeah.
going to get offended over this movie.
Somebody would have.
Well, they would have, but
Well, and at the time that it was originally releasing,
the vocal minority
no
would have been
doubt.
offended,
Yeah.
but it would have been fine.
but that's the thing. No doubt it would have been in the press as to, this film, it correlates or it reflects on the culture, and it's
critics would
adding
have
to the
thrashed it
noise.
for its message. They would have
Yes.
said, "Oh, this is a terrible movie," but it would have came and gone.
Well, they would have-
Yeah,
But they
would've-
did release it, so
They
I'm
did.
just saying they
Yeah.
did finally come back and
And it
say,
came
"Well,
and it
we already
went,
made it.
and
We're going to
nobody
put
cared."
it out. We'll just wait a little while."
Right.
But
maybe one day
I
they'll
don't think
do that
they
with-
edited it. I don't think.
Maybe one day they'll do that with Batgirl. They'll be like, you know what? Let's
Yeah.
just toss it in there.
Alrighty,
Yeah.
guys, let's move on to our
Well, don't you
next
think, real
topic.
quick though?
Oh,
Don't
yeah,
you
yeah,
think
go
that's
ahead, go
what they
ahead.
did with, like with the Snyder Cut? You don't think that they hung that over people's heads and put that out there on the internet to see how many people are really going to bite and how many people are going to say, yes, we want it, we want it, we want it. Then we finally give it to them. I think they had it planned from the beginning.
Here's the thing. It's tricky because while I would love to admit that, they were geniuses and played 4D chess, they benefited nothing from it other than possible bump in subscriptions.
They have said they actually regret having done it now because now fans won't shut up about it, and they didn't make them enough money for them to be interested.
They
in
spent like
continuing
80 something million.
to let
Yeah.
him finish it. Yeah.
Additional.
And I hate to say it, but unlike the other kind of comparison it was thrown to at the time when that happened was the Sonic film, because fans rallied and got
Yeah.
the design change.
Yeah.
But whereas I
That
think
needed
that
to happen, though.
well, I was going to say we've talked about vocally on this show before about how you can blatantly see when fans are going overboard and a little bit too particular and have too much sway in what a production studio does.
Yeah.
But at
When
the
they
same
start using
time,
bots to get,
Yeah.
petitions.
yes.
And I may have used a bad example with
No,
the Snyder
no.
Cut, but I'm saying I do think that these production companies definitely,
Oh, so-
if they
yeah.
think something is gonna fail even in the slightest, I do feel like they play this marketing game where
Oh,
it's
no
like,
doubt.
let's see
They
if
have
we can
people
get
that-
this. Yeah,
they pay
because
people to
people will want Batgirl to come out, and
Yep.
if they release that a year later, it'll be more of a success than it would have been if it came out when it was supposed to.
It's weird in these instances because so much of it is about reading the room, but it's also how well is your social team or your people that you
Yes.
I mean, again, it could be a management issue where they don't trust them, and the people who are in social media or their younger crowd is like, no, you want to do something about this. This is bad PR.
Yeah.
You're going to have a back and forth in that in terms of corporate, but it's like, you still have this issue, I think, when you're dealing with something like movies or video games or anything that's culturally very dependent on its core fan base, or what, and it doesn't even have to be a fan base of something that is as long in the tooth as like Marvel or comic book films or anything like that. It could be just, this property's got an immense amount of popularity, and now we have to deliver, or otherwise we're going to get a backlash from fans, and this is not just going to last for this film, it's going to last for the next one.
Yeah.
Or, they're not going to buy this album, they're also not going to buy the next one because you said something stupid.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just people are
That's what they
petty
did with
that way,
Star
but in
Wars.
this world we live in, that's sadly how everything is amounted to. It's like you vote with your dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And now everything has been not only politically charged, but culturally charged, to where it's like the only way you can showcase your disdain for this is to trash it and completely bemoan its existence, to the point where you have major corporations backpedaling. And I think it shows a disservice to the almighty dollar of like, yes, you can expect certain corporations to cower in any given circumstance. I ultimately think businesses are amoral in that regard. They're really just looking at a spreadsheet of what's going to get us the most money, or how can we do damage control.
Yeah.
But even still, I think most people will respect, whether they agree or disagree, with a company who has a backbone to stand on a certain decision. And even if that decision is poor, because ultimately then it at least showcases who you truly are underneath,
Yeah.
and it showcases your real values, and then it gives me the inclination as a customer or a consumer to say, all right, good, I'm glad I know where you stand. Don't agree with it, and now I'll choose to spend my money elsewhere. But at least I now know that you're not just trying to have some wiggle room of the, going along with the very vocal minority, which we've seen in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to these woke corporations. But I don't think the movie industry is any different. If more so, it's kind of more potent because of how closely related to, I think, the cultural warfare we have going on in the country. So I don't know. It's interesting to see that. I think a lot of times the inflation for the indie film scene, it hits hard simply because so many of those messages that I think you could possibly see getting above the fray or getting drowned out by the cultural, vocal minority. Sometimes indie films cut through that noise and they allow something to be said that I think generates a lot more mass appeal that most of these bigger companies and the vocal minority were trying to drown out or not pay attention to. A lot of indie filmmakers
are just trying to make a good movie and tell a good story because they're trying to get in the business. They're not caught up in all the same BS because they're focusing on building their career and making the best movie possible. And I wish more filmmakers would do that. Like, let's tell a story that speaks to people on a base level that can speak to everybody instead of singling
or sadly,
in on,
and I also think you have within all of this masquerading as indie films the support of certain production companies or certain even artists that say they don't have certain kinds of exposure or they say they don't, but they come from a certain perspective that then these bigger companies get behind to push forward into the masses because, of course, that's what they know is going to be the popular perspective, or at least that's what's perceived as the popular perspective. Because I think that's a problem with all the woke ideology. At the end of the day, you're going to have people who will rally behind a certain, view, and they'll complain when that view is not present in a certain property, and they'll say, "How dare you?" or they'll condemn a certain company for not pursuing a certain message, and then the company comes out and they're like, "No, you got us all wrong." I mean, we saw this with the Disney Florida fiasco with the "Don't Say Gay" bill, quote unquote, and it was like the fallout from that for Disney was you reached out to people or you came out in defense of something that was just a vocal minority on social media that didn't represent your base, and you've had backlash from it that immediately resulted in them shutting up and backing off. And I think that's a problem, is because guess what? You're not only woke base as a minority, but also the problem with going down that road is they're not going to show up and support you all of a sudden. No, they just are a bunch of angry trolls on the internet that just want to see if they can get you to move an inch in the direction they want just based on being loud in the moment. And I think you have to really, really watch that as not only an indie film creator, but just as anybody who's invested in something, independent and trying to move the needle forward. Because you do have to say, all right, I get that this is popular right now, but I'm going to go against the grain and tell this because this actually has weight and levity that most people may not agree with, or they may not even see as valid until they see it and they, it opens their eyes, or a populace comes around it and says, "Oh, actually, this movie's really good, and it's not woke. It doesn't have this kind of idea," because it actually speaks to the people who are a majority out there. But it's getting far and few between, unfortunately, and inflation's not going to help it. But let's move on. I'm sorry. I got on a rant there.
We all kept it going.
Let's talk about Oscars going to streaming. Is this a possibility?
I remember we did actually talk last year, I believe it was, where Disney had mentioned like the idea they batted around about possibly being able to stream it like on Disney Plus because obviously they own ABC. And now we have mentioned where they've announced their new producers and director who have mentioned that is something that they are still considering, but they haven't really given much information on if they are or what platform. I still presume it'll either be Disney or Hulu, since that's who owns ABC that streams the Oscars. But yeah, I mean, it would be, I think in some ways maybe better because nobody watches it on air anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, true.
Yeah,
I feel like the people who want to see it.
But is that's the other thing? Is it going to be any different if they stream it?
Oh no, that's the thing.
Like, who's going to tune in again if they stream it?
Us. That's what I'm saying. Like the people who want to see it will find a way to watch it streaming. But
we don't even want to see it. We've talked about in the last few years. We only watch it because we do a movie podcast.
I don't think it's going to save them. Like I don't think whatever they do either way.
I want to watch it just to see if somebody gets hit.
Now,
like, I mean, if somebody gets smacked or beat up on stage, that would be amazing.
It's so sad, but you're right. That's exactly what they're going to bank off of.
That was the entertainment.
They're really hoping that people will tune in again because again, we were talking about this earlier. What do you remember about last year's show? Nothing.
The slap.
I couldn't even remember who won Best Picture for a minute. Brandon had to think about it for a couple seconds before he remembered it was Coda. And I was like, yeah, I completely forgot. Actually, I don't even remember most of who the nominees were. I don't remember who won what award other than Will Smith winning because he got to get up there after he slapped somebody and still give a speech.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
that's what the whole night became about.
So it was one of those things where it's no longer about the movies. They've made it outside of Will Smith's slap. For the last several years, it's no longer been about honoring filmmaking.
Nope.
And people they're kind of tired of, they're not kind of, they are. They're just tired of watching these Hollywood elites get up there and spew the same crap over and over and pat themselves on the back and talk about how much they're going to lead the way in changing the world on all these issues.
All virtue
signaling. And then they're going to go home to their $1 million houses and sleep
drive
with
their gas-powered cars on their way home.
They're
fly
private jets.
They're going to sleep in their home with their security guards outside with their walls, making sure nobody gets in. You know,
well, the security guards have guns too.
They're going to go to Martha's Vineyard and have a good time and not worry about the riffraff.
It's funny.
I'm just saying.
They're all against guns, but they use them in every movie that they star in.
That's right.
Kind of funny.
That's
Alec
right.
Baldwin.
Well, yeah, he literally used his.
Sad. It's so true.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it's a bunch of hypocrisy. People are just tired of it. And they're not tuning in. I don't think they're going to tune into streaming either. I just say I think maybe it's a better idea because they're not getting the viewers on TV anyways. So the few who will tune in, maybe they will to streaming.
And I think they're thinking, honestly, it's like most people don't even know when it's going on. Most people don't care.
Most people don't stay up for it because of the time frame.
That too.
It runs way too long, way too late. So.
That's what worries me is that if it's streaming, they won't be worried about it taking up airtime, so they'll just make it another 4-hour show.
See, I don't see that only because I do think they know the drawback of how long it already is. And again, part of the problem is it's the get woke, go broke. It's like
you let people stand up there and talk forever.
And it's like
you rush the technical people off the stage, and then these other people could stand up here and spout nonsense.
And honestly,
forever.
we were like we were talking about earlier, the biggest news story before the slap, because obviously that happened the night of the show, was the fact that so many of the categories, the below the line categories, got cut from being live streamed.
Yep.
And those are the people who you owe the filmmaking process to.
Yeah.
You would not have a film without them.
Yeah.
And so you sit here and act as if you're not elitist, and by very definition, the show that is supposed to award the very people who make up the industry, the majority of them who make up the industry are the ones behind the camera. And yet you just gloss over them or act like they're not worth the time of day. And I'm like, no, the ones who actually care about film and the ones who would even tune into this to begin with don't care about the glitz and the glamour of the, frickin' who's wearing what dress or how they look. They want to hear genuine, honest people who made a film that they enjoyed that year come to life and hear how they are just like them. They're a normal blue-collar worker. But no, instead we get Leonardo DiCaprio denying to come up there and accept an award because, heaven forbid, maybe he wants to save the planet and fly on his private jet.
I do also and this is a little unrelated. Something I find personally funny is that they have the Oscars So White and all this push, just like with the Golden Globes, to diversify the members and the president and everybody involved with the Academy. And the two producers they hire are old white men.
Because they have experience.
I was like, because they have live TV. They hired them because they have live TV.
Oh, they've
experience.
won multiple Emmys.
And they've won multiple Emmys. They think they could take it back to. And it's funny they mentioned kind of taking it back to like a classic Oscar period. But I'm like, okay. You know how you do that is you quit doing all the woke
everything you're doing now.
All the soapbox stuff, because that's not what you want to get rid of, but that's what you do need to get rid of if you want to go back to the 80s or 90s when people loved the Oscars.
And I don't understand the disconnect, because they even bring up in the article, they're talking about specifically how after hiring these two guys, there's a potential that they'll bring in other producers to help like they have in past years. Big name producers. But also it's like there's a separation, I guess, from the Academy as an institution and like the Board of Governors, who I guess oversees like the Academy members, which is where we get, was it Dawn Hudson? I may be butchering her name. But it's like you have like Tom Hanks is on the Board of Governors and you have all these other members of the Academy and apparently from each branch. But I'm sitting here and I'm like, you already know that, okay, from the way they're presenting this, even with the two old white guy producers from the board of governors, and the woke approach they're going to have, it's like I already see a disconnect coming, and there being a huge clash of this becoming way bigger than it should be down the road when we get closer to the ceremony, because there's just going to be people who, pardon my French, bitch and moan about the fact that you've got these two guys and they're just out of touch and they don't understand the culture that we live in anymore. Yeah. And I'm just rolling my eyes because it's going to be another flop. Nobody's going to tune in.
We will.
If anybody does, it's going to be because
we will.
We're kind of obligated.
Yeah, it's kind of like, no, we don't want anybody to go see the next Marvel movie and give them money because they suck, but we're going to go see it.
Exactly.
Like, don't watch the Oscars.
We got to have something to yak about. We don't see it. We can't complain. So.
Well, and again, we're becoming the new old white dudes that want to argue about the way it used back in my day.
It's like if you don't like it, then don't watch. It's like, but then we can't complain about it.
I remember as a family when I was a kid, we literally would pop popcorn and sit and watch Billy Crystal lead the Oscars, and it was great. I didn't even know. I was a kid. I didn't know any of the movies that were even there.
The Oscar show was just
fun. The show
was
fun. Exactly.
Well, and even if you didn't, because I will say, and thankfully my parents kind of raised me in such a way of kind of mocking that elitist perspective of, oh, you all think you're better than us. So they always just would tune in for like the intro, the monologue, and kind of crack jokes. Mm-hmm. But at least even if you didn't appreciate, the grandstanding of the Hollywood elites, you appreciated the films that were nominated. Yeah. And often you would see it being as a bastion of, oh, if this won an Academy Award or it was nominated. Because I remember that being the case, and it somewhat still is. As soon as the Oscars were over, you'd see like a re-release of a film that was nominated to get an extra run and kind of gain and pick up some steam in the box office.
Avatar was nominated and then never stopped re-releasing it.
Yeah.
And it's happening again pretty soon.
Just as James Cameron said, you haven't seen it if you watched it
They
at home.
have to re-release it before the sequel because there's now a generation that never saw it in theaters.
That's right.
You've never truly seen it if you've not seen it in theaters.
You got to see it in 3D.
Yeah.
He's still pushing for
It's not dead. It's not dead.
3D's not dead.
I hate it.
James
I didn't
Cameron
used to. I know Brandon has for a long time. I never used to hate James Cameron, but every year
he's
that
so
passes,
full of himself.
I'm just like, man, I just can't.
He's a prick.
He is all about himself.
But the thing is, though, is sometimes pricks can make really good movies.
No, I'm not arguing that.
Is this prick isn't making any good movies?
Not anymore. He used to.
Well, I would argue that. Well, Titanic's a guilty pleasure. That's all I'll say. It's a guilty pleasure. And Terminator 2 is great.
Terminator 2 is awesome.
It's amazing.
Terminator 1 and 2 and Aliens are all three. Like, he nailed all three of those, so I'll give him that.
And I guess that gave him the clout to be a dick.
I guess.
I guess.
All I know is if you gave him a gun like you gave Alec Baldwin, he would shoot somebody. James Cameron would kill somebody.
I didn't mean to turn
and
this
he
into
wouldn't
James
lie
Cameron
about it.
rant.
He would just admit to it.
Yeah.
He would be like, I did. They didn't do what I told them, so I shot
They
them.
deserved it. They said 3D was dead, so now
It's
they're
like
dead.
I told Kate Winslet she needed to stay underwater longer. She said no, so I just got the gun out.
That's right.
It's like, hold your breath for 8 minutes. No one can do that. You do it.
He's just standing on the boat pointing the gun down. Like, you better get back down there.
Never let go, huh? Never let go.
God.
All right. I think we're ready to move
move
on.
on.
We're going to go into our Vices segment. Let's roll that open. Vices. Let's talk about. Yeah, we do have like another deep conversation. So the question tonight, guys, for our vices is sacrificing long-term gain for short-term pleasure.
For
Short-term.
For short-term pleasure.
When Sean took his shirt off,
pleasure.
when he took his shirt off earlier, I had pleasure. No.
I know, for a short time.
No, actually, it's funny because I remember an old youth minister of mine. That was actually something he used to say all the time was short-term pleasure leads to long-term regret. And I mean, in more ways than I know a lot of people think of that in a sexual manner, but I mean that applies to a lot of things, not just
But rightfully so, yeah.
But because there's a lot of ways, it's like it's fast and easy to go to Taco Bell or McDonald's, but you
Damn
do that
it.
all the time.
Yeah, to call me out. I'm going after the show.
Going after the show.
I'm just saying, it's the easy thing, the choice between doing what is right and what is easy. And sometimes the easy decision you do because it is easy, but easy. Yeah, easy. Yeah.
Easy.
But yeah, sometimes you make the easy decision because it's easy and it's not the right decision.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I wanted to open this up because I know we've talked about like procrastinating on the show
this
before.
applies to so many
It
things.
does. And
It's a big topic. Yeah.
Right. And I can't. I was kind of talking to Keith about it a little bit last night because he came over to do the review, and I was sitting there playing Ghost of Tsushima when he walked in.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest with you, it's like I worked a 6-day week last week, and I was on a different shift to cover for somebody. And in my thought, I was like, I thought I was going to have to do the same thing this week. It ended up being that I was back on my normal schedule, so I actually had 2 days off. And I was having my weekend, and I was like, you know what? I have not had a weekend in a while where I just kind of got to relax and not have any kind of, I got to do this checklist of things. I don't have to go anywhere, be anywhere. So I was like, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm just going to kind of chillax. And it wasn't until he got done recording the review and he comes out and then we're sitting there talking about, obviously Halloween films reviews coming up. And I'm just like sitting there. I was like, I could be doing a lot more productive things right now than just playing this video game.
You could have, but
and
you didn't.
You definitely need, I think, decompression to not just constant. Again, all work, no play makes Jack a dull boy. But there is a point in which you have to reliably say, all right, maybe I've, spent a little bit too much time goofing off or not being productive, that it starts to wane on like, okay, what am I really, what am I doing to progress what I have a passion and a dream for? Because if there's been anything that I've known and gained and earned in life, it's that while it's hard in the moment and sometimes you don't see the brightness of like getting through that lapse of, that hard, in
the moment.
Instant. Yeah, I'm trying to think of different ways to
No,
say
you're
it.
fine.
You're sitting there and it's like it's hard to get through, but after you get through that patch of difficulty, it's like, okay, you come out on the other side and you feel fulfilled.
You hit a brick wall sometimes. I mean, there's times when work can be rough or you have a lot going on in your life and that what you need to do to be productive, or if you're trying to lose weight or if you're trying to succeed in something.
That's a big one.
There's plenty of things where what you need to do, but because it's been a long day or a rough week and you're just like, I'd love nothing more than just go veg out on the couch. And it's easy to do that because you are tired and you are wore down. And it's getting over that hurdle of the moment, like you were saying, that is rough. But when you do it, it is more gratifying because it does lead towards that long-term fulfillment that is so much more satisfying than just the small amount of joy you got sitting on the couch watching whatever you're watching for an hour or two.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, with like Rings of Power on Fridays and House of the Dragon on Sundays. Like, man, I it's guaranteed I got to watch them.
Yeah.
What about you, Sean?
No, when we saw the notes update over while we were next door.
Yeah.
And it's kind of in my head. It immediately went to the topic of sin, which would have been kind of where Keith was going with what the youth minister said. I've always, of course, everybody struggles with different sin. It's different for everybody, but there's always been those things in my life that's kind of like, it's that instant gratification, or it may be something that's going to bring me joy or pleasure right now, but I know not necessarily am I going to be fulfilled later, but I know that it's going to be worse later.
Oh, yeah.
Like the result or the outcome of it is going to be a lot more to my detriment than
that long-term regret.
Yeah, long-term regret, exactly.
Yeah.
But I also, the thought popped in my head about, like just to simple it, make it a little simpler. My son, I'm trying to teach him how to manage money, and so he's got money. And I was telling them next door, like there's this, Pokemon game comes out in November, the new one for Switch, and he wants it. And I'm telling him, like you
save for it.
Well, the thing is I'm like, you've got the money now. Go ahead and pre-order it, and then come November, it'll come to the front door, and you'll be happy because you got it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to pre-order it, and I said, if you save that money, or if you wait, you're going to end up spending that money on a pleasure that you see now, like something you want now, and you're not going to have it later when you actually need it or want it, because this is something that he really, really wants. And I'm like, this is managing money. If you want it, go ahead and invest and get it later. Like if you make the investment now, you'll get it later, and you'll be so much happier later when you're able to play it. But if you lose your $70 that you've got now on a couple of Pokemon cards and some snacks that you want that we don't normally buy and things, because that's the kind of stuff we're making him buy with his money. And I'm like, then come November, you're gonna be unhappy because you're not getting, and I'm not giving you the money to get it.
Right.
And so
it's the consequence.
Yeah,
I remember
that long
saving
term.
up. I know Brandon does too. When we saved up for our Game Boys, and everything, because I mean, my parents didn't just go buy me a Game Boy. I mean, whatever money I might get from odd chores or whatever money I get for birthdays and Christmas, it's like, I would hold on to that money, and eventually, I mean, I did. I got my Game Boy, and I got
it was
Pokemon
either
Red. It was great.
I knew it was either Christmas.
Yeah.
It was when I would get a major gift like that, like a console or something.
Yeah.
And even then, I knew it's like it was going to be one or the other. You're not getting both.
Yeah.
And even I remember, complaining to Logan, a good buddy, joking around, because he would get, tons. Like he would get like 4 or 5 video games for Christmas, and of course at the time I wanted a bunch of them, and my parents were very strict, and I actually appreciate this now looking back. They would only get me 1 handheld game and 1 console game, and they were like, "You don't need to be playing a video game all the time.
Yeah,
we'll get you one that you really, really want." And of course, I would go on there on my list and be like, I'd put a bunch, but I'd also be like, but this is the one that I definitely want.
Pick.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, but it's just like, I mean, it kind of goes back to even the discipline of not spoiling. They knew not to spoil me with not only having a litany of games. And it's funny because even Logan kind of he thought it was funny that I would get mad or I wasn't mad, but jealous of him getting all these games, and he never played them.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, yeah, I get all of them, but I never play half of them.
Yeah.
And, and it was kind of the opposite. He didn't let it become such a priority of something in his life that it kind of took a toll in that regard.
Yeah.
And even for me, it's like, I enjoyed and appreciated the games that I did get, a lot more. Another big purchase that I saved up for was my camera, my very first camera. A Canon Allura 80. I remember it was my first digital camera that I got. Before I bought that, I was running around my dad's Sony Handycam 8mm tapes, recorded in this terrible, like lower than standard definition quality. And yet that was what I used. And of course, I was wanting to step up into the big game, and I was looking at certain cameras. And I mean, you're talking about a $500 purchase. And I remember working my butt off to get that purchase because it was something I was passionate for. And my mom and dad, I do thank them for seeing not only that tenacity of wanting to earn it, but also knowing that they gave me a way to earn it. They weren't just like, well, you're going to have to wait till you're 16 and get a job. They were like, no, we can give you some chores around the house, and you can help not only pick up and clean up, but if you do it diligently and you discipline yourself to do it daily, then we'll give you an allowance that reciprocates that.
Yeah.
And thankfully it helped me not only save up and earn that money, but then I bought my camera, and I was invested more in how I used it after the fact.
Yeah. And
continually wanting to pour my passion into it.
Yeah.
And learning it on same with my editing software. And, nobody sat down, and taught me how to use it. It was wanting to sit there and deliberately learn how to use it. And it's interesting because it's like you said, even with your son Sawyer, turning, him to, if you really, really want this, you have to have that discipline of putting your mindset where your focus is and saying, this is how I'm going to achieve it. Because if you don't, well, then you are. It's so easy to get distracted, especially in this day and age. And like you said, Sean, you will not have that joy. It's fleeting.
Yeah, he'll spend the money on junk that he won't play with, and that'll end up in the trash or broken.
Yep.
And then, like I said, when this thing that he really wants finally is released and he doesn't have it, and he doesn't have the crap that he bought before that, then where does that leave you?
Yeah.
And we're kind of, like you mentioned about allowance, like we did start giving him allowance for chores that he's doing. And part of that is also not just the money management thing, but he tithes. We're making him tithe.
Awesome.
So he and this is different for everybody. I'm not saying you should or whatever, but we do 10%, and he gives 10% of his allowance. And I've told him this is also something that you're gonna do this now, and it hurts. It hurts to give a little bit of the money you worked all week to earn to the church, but in the long term, like next Sunday, we're gonna go work at a school and do some landscaping. And I'm like, where do you think they got the money to do that for that school? They got it because of your tithe and because of everybody else's tithe that's doing it. Like, you have a hand, you have $1 in the mulch that we're going to be putting down at this school that doesn't have it.
That's right.
And when we go to fix these old people's gutters or whatever, the gutters and the time, that's being funded by your giving. And even though it hurts right now, look at the joy that these old folks are going to have when they have new gutters on their house that they couldn't afford, and look at how pretty the front of the school is going to look with new landscaping and stuff. So it does, even if you can't see the reward now, there's a reward later.
Yes.
You'll see it later.
Yep. And I love the way my mom always put it. She would always say, "It's all God's. He's just asking for this much."
Yeah, he's asking you to be a good steward.
That's right.
That's it. Yeah.
And not only that, but I also, like you just said there, the reward of, I like the way Dennis Prager kind of puts it. He's like, happiness is something that's after the moment has already lapsed. You may have joy in a moment. There's nothing wrong with joy. You can go and enjoy a concert and you may be joyous in the moment. But if you do it all the time and you go to every single concert and you waste all your money on it, that joy in that moment doesn't last after the fact.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing other than just the adrenaline rush you get in that moment. But happiness is something that you have well beyond the sacrifice you make in the given moment. Mm-hmm. And I think about that even with the projects we've done, whether it is, there's times where, and I'm sure y'all may or may not admit it on the show, but it's like, there are some Tuesday nights that come that it's just like, it's going to be tough to get through this episode because I'm either not feeling well or it's been a rough week and I'm tired. And it's like, it's hard to come in here and do this consistently every week. But I am so thankful that I not only get to commune with you all every single week and get to do this show.
I like to commune.
But but it's also nice to just be able to look back on the litany of shows that we've had in our catalog and on projects like Margaret's Monsters and more to come.
Hashtag one day.
Hashtag one day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like when I do see, those things that we can point back to and say, now look at what we've created there. We've actually gotten together and look at what we've done.
Our own hands.
And I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with them. You know what movie that is?
That's Anchorman, isn't
That's
it?
it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Talladega Nights. Sorry.
Oh, Talladega Nights.
Yeah.
I knew it was Will Ferrell.
But yeah, I enjoy this show, and I enjoy the amount of time and effort we put into it each week. I'm thankful for you all showing up and doing this because God knows you all don't have to. But I'm very happy with not only what we've built here and continue to build, but it's something that gives me a little bit more pride in just,
we love you too, Brandon.
Yeah. I have to try to get y'all to love me by coming here every week.
All of your fancy toys that you attract us with.
And then I basically...
Technically, these are ours. We bought
true.
this.
Yeah, if I quit, I'm taking my mic.
It's yours. It's yours.
That's the only thing I got.
It's like we invested in Red Moon. We invested 2 microphones.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. I think that's going to do it for this episode. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Right there at the bottom of your screen, all of our social media accounts.
Yeah.
We're there. We're right there on
there.
the internet,
Everywhere.
the webs.
Here, there.
We're going to have an
Every
OnlyFans. I really think we need to break into
we
that.
should do a
I
Red
think
Moon
you're right.
OnlyFans. That would be fun.
I think, and we'll.
It's not going to be
specifically-
nudity. I'll just do pictures shirtless.
Just feet pics.
Yeah,
I'm going to do the truffle shuffle. People will pay
that's
for
true.
that. They'll pay for that.
that's sacrificing short-term pleasure for long-term gain.
Is it?
Yeah, because
I'm thinking about the long-term gain of the money we're
That's
going
what
to
I
get
was
from
thinking about.
OnlyFans.
I'm not
'Cause
even
we're
sure.
charging. It's not free.
Why am I sacrificing? I get both. The Truffle Shuffle's short-term pleasure, and I get long-term
No,
money.
that's what I'm saying.
I'm getting both.
Oh, that's not
Short-term and
a sacrifice.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. I have my cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
I like your thinking.
Yeah.
It's done. So there you go.
I bet we could
Follow
at
us.
least get $20 off me doing the Truffle Shuffle on
Oh.
OnlyFans.
Oh, hell
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
We could.
If you would pay $2.99 to see Keith do the Truffle Shuffle, just go put a comment.
Venmo us right now.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna ask for it right away.
Yeah, just
but
send us money now. We'll
we're
deliver
testing the
later.
waters.
There's a donate button on YouTube. Go donate.
Hey, you know how
Yeah.
they could
and
let
Keith
us know?
will do it.
They could let us know an old-fashioned way, but they could send us that electronic mail.
What could you be? What could you be talking about?
Well, if you want to see me do the Truffle Shuffle, shoot us an email. Say, hey, I'd pay to see that. I'd buy that for $1.
Where do they email us?
Well, I'll tell you where. RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Just gorgeous. Just gorgeous.
That's worth $2.99 right there.
That is. Right there. And like, share, subscribe at all of our social media. Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Pics, and search for us, Red Moon Productions on YouTube and soon to be OnlyFans. Until next time, I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host.
Oh, Sean Sebastian.
And
Not the normal new host. I'm not.
You're the old white cis host.
that's it.
True.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.